Chapter 10, Record Lows. A deep cold hit the Midwest during the 2018-2019 winter. The last weeks of January 2019 were poised to set records and pose a very real health risk for residents of the flyover states. Wind chills below negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit swept in, and the cold settled deep. Cars failed to start, and ice on the frozen road was so entrenched that no salt or plows could remove it. I had spun out before in rain, snow, sleet, and ice, conquering horrible weather and driving treacherous roads, but I had never seen anything like that winter. Driving even at 5 miles an hour was too fast, making it impossible to control a car on ice that cold. I had always loved extreme weather. I was 12 when I saw my first tornado and had chased them ever since. However, that winter's weather was not the type which I wished to chase. It physically hurt in seconds, and one breath in that frigid air took the life from my lungs. Worry was on everyone's mind at Jane's house. We feared the pilot light on Jane's furnace would go out, or the furnace would fail against the workload, leaving us without a heat source. Despite the insulation, just a few days into the super chill, the temperatures stole the heat from the house. Space heaters couldn't keep up, and it took effort to resolve the situation. We managed the problem with the help of Jane's ex, who was an electrician. It was a legit life-or-death, time-sensitive situation, and teamwork proved essential between the three of us. Finally, we had heat in the house again, but the cold outside was sticking around for the long haul. In the week before the deep freeze set in, I first interacted with a girl from the website who lives in Tiffin, Ohio, an hour southeast of Toledo. That following week, fully immersed in the devastating cold, I headed to Tiffin. Tiffin was a small city surrounded by farmlands. It had a legitimate small downtown, but barns and tractors lined the highway in all directions from the city. Flat fields encompassed the countryside, barren and snow-covered through the winters, stereotypical Midwest. I parked on a downtown street and took a short 50-foot walk to the Tiffin apartment. The wind burned my face and fingers, and I could barely open my eyes. There were 2 flights of outdoor stairs exposed to the elements leading up to the apartment door. After a minute and a half outside, I cursed all of existence as I shivered down to my bones. Haley let me inside. Her apartment, though not as cold as the wind whipped outside, was still below freezing. Her utilities had been shut off, and it was her last day in the apartment as she had been evicted. Haley, a Toledo native, grabbed her bag as I prepped and blew down a couple of hot rails. The drugs did nothing to warm up my core. It had only been 5 minutes since I first stepped out of my car. The heat in my car had quit working back in late fall, making the cold even worse. I had been driving around that winter with nothing but my own body heat for warmth. I managed fine until the really cold weather hit, a battle I couldn't win. When I picked up Haley that day, I knew I was in for some chicanery. No matter how cold and uncomfortable I was, I knew Haley had to be feeling worse. That day, Haley begun her second day of heroin withdrawal. I had a rule for myself the whole time I lived with my friend Jane. I never brought or invited anyone to Jane's house. Jane allowed me to live with her and her 2 adolescent sons, but my business, whether work or pleasure, was always handled elsewhere. I never had friends over. Besides the mutual friends from my home city I shared with Jane and the friends she herself invited over, everyone else remained in the dark about my residence. It was drug-induced paranoia, but also my diligence to protect my friend and her kids. That first night with Haley was a long one. I drove her from Tiffin to inner-city Toledo. We stopped on a street near my grandma's house, a neighborhood I knew well from years prior. I remembered waiting on those streets for heroin dealers, the stress through the roof as friends ran inside houses to score drugs. The longer we sat in cars on those streets, the more likely we were to be approached by police, or worse. Haley claimed we had stopped at her aunt's house to pick up some money. I didn't say anything, but thought otherwise. Sitting in my cold car on that street, I had the same feeling from all those years ago. I didn't feel the need to call Haley out on her maneuvering that evening. As the sun went down, it grew colder. Haley insisted she needed only $80 more to get her apartment back. After a few fruitless steps, I finally reached my limit of patience. Just before dawn, I stopped by an inner-city carryout, withdrew $80 from an ATM, and gave it to Haley. She promised to pay me back, but I knew I would never see that money again. I didn't care. I was cold and needed heat. I picked a hotel from my travel app and began driving towards West Toledo. It was after 6 in the morning, and I had to try for the earliest of early check-ins. Both Haley and I shared the same physical symptoms from the cold, our legs burning and numb simultaneously. I thought we might be in the first stages of freezing to death. As we drove by a house that jogged my memory, Haley heard me laugh to myself. She inquired, and I told her a story from the house we had just passed, one that had taken place only months before. I had met a lady on the website, the same site where I met Haley. I drove out to her house. She wasn't the lady from her profile. If she was, then her profile pictures were at least a decade old. I decided to walk in and sit down anyhow. I kept rejecting the lady's advances. She kept walking upstairs for a minute at a time. I was about to get up and leave. All of a sudden, an older, angry guy in his white brief underwear stomped down the stairs. The guy had a 70s blaxploitation mustache and an attitude. He yelled just a couple sentences at me before stomping back upstairs. "Hey man, my sister tells me you're a nice guy, but you need to pay her $40. What don't you understand about giving her the money?" I didn't even bother to unholster my gun while at that house. I kept it secure in my ankle. After the brother went back upstairs, I got up to leave. The sister tried to get me to stay. I threw two 20s on the floor in front of the couch. I had been hoodwinked. I paid $40 for that life lesson. Haley laughed a little. She told me that what happened to me was unfortunate. I remained silent. I was thinking how Haley had taken me for twice that amount of money just an hour before I told her that story. Freezing in my car, Haley and I made it to the hotel on Reynolds Road in Toledo. It had been a battle the entire night to see through the windshield of my car while driving. Our breath in the frigid air had created a situation where ice formed almost instantly on the inside of the glass. I constantly used an ice scraper on my windshield as I drove. I pulled into what I guessed was a parking space in front of the hotel. I greeted the Indian man at the counter. "No rooms this early. We've been in my car all night without heat. We can't last much longer." The man took pity on me. "Give it half hour. Come back then." Haley and I walked together to the shower in the hotel room. We spent the rest of that day in our warm room, fully naked and making videos. The cold outside raged on. Our minds were elsewhere for the time. It reached 6:30 the following morning. Haley and I had spent a full 24 hours of warmth in that hotel, but I had to be somewhere. I showered again. I hurried and dressed. "Where am I taking you?" It took me 15 minutes to scrape the ice from the inside of my windshield. All the ice shavings fell onto my dashboard. My car was running the entire time, and it didn't heat up inside at all. I ran back upstairs to tell Haley that the car was ready to go. I hurt everywhere from the cold. I tried to focus my thoughts away from the fact that hell had frozen over. The drugs were no match for the Ohio winter. I didn't expect any relief from the cold for the next hour. I had a drive ahead of me to the Detroit airport. It was 7 in the morning, and I was on the interstate heading north out of Ohio. The sun was shining that morning. No clouds were in the sky. It was bright to the point of distraction as I crossed into Michigan. I was so cold, and the light reflecting from the ice all around me was making the drive one of the most dangerous trips I had ever taken. Cars around me on the highway were littered about on the sides of the lanes. Some cars had obviously spun out on the ice. Others sat more orderly and straight. They seemed to have given into the cold, abandoned by their drivers. I knew that if I succumbed to either of those fates, if I ended up on the side of that road, I would be in for a terrible death at the hands of the Midwest winter temperatures. After a white-knuckle drive, I finally pulled into the big blue deck parking garage to store my car at the Detroit airport. I began to ascend the levels of parking. I was pushing it for time, but if I could park and get through security inside the terminal in the next hour, I'd be able to walk to the gate just as boarding was about to begin. I kept climbing the parking levels, driving in circles to make my way higher. Panic began to fill my mind. Panic eclipsed my hatred for the cold when I reached the top level of the parking garage. An hour had passed. I had scoured the entire complex. There was nowhere to park. Defeated, I wound my way back down through the parking garage. My flight was scheduled for departure in 15 minutes. I called the airline as I heard other flights above me taking off and landing. 20 minutes of explaining, being put on hold, and explaining again secured me a different flight, along with spending $400 extra, and along with a 12-hour wait until my new departure time. I had 12 more hours in the frozen wasteland of the Midwest. I left the airport to take another hour-long drive back the other direction, another hour without heat. The cold once again became my focus. Hell, it really had frozen over. I ran from my car into Walmart when I reached Perrysburg that morning. The heated store felt amazing. I sat on a bench inside the store for 10 minutes before I was able to walk into my bank. I decided the $1,000 in cash I had in my pocket was better off in my bank account. I deposited the money, leaving me with $4 in my wallet. I was so hungry. I went to the grocery section and picked out a few things to eat. When I went to pay at the register, my debit card was declined. I protested, then I walked back over to my bank. I explained the situation to the bank teller. After another 15 minutes with the bank teller on the phone, I was told my money issue had been resolved. I went back to the checkout line and tried to pay again. Again, my card was declined. Again, I walked over to my bank. That time, after a few more minutes, I was told I would be able to use my card in another 15 minutes. I walked back outside without waiting around. I was 10 minutes from Jane's house. I would eat when I got home. The cold outside the doors of Walmart abruptly ended my hunger. I had no choice but to switch my focus from eating to the very real possibility of freezing to death. I thought by midday that day, I would have already left the Midwest and the nightmare cold. I was supposed to be on my approach to my destination as I sat in my room at Jane's house and thought about the day thus far. I snapped out of my daze, and I informed Madison of my new arrival time to Kalispell, Montana. I thought ahead to the evening. I got online and searched parking lots close to the Detroit airport with shuttle service to the terminal. I found an independently run parking lot 4 miles from the terminal. I pulled my debit card from my wallet to book a reservation for parking spaces ahead of time. I wasn't about to head to Detroit again without a secured parking space. When my card was declined, I called my bank customer service department. Unlike the bank teller physically standing before me at my bank earlier, the lady on the phone explained to me what was going on. Since it wasn't me who directly rebooked my flight earlier that morning, my debit card had been flagged. The issue with my bank flagging fraud from the rebooking of my flight was resolved after some stress and more time on the phone. I then kept my card out and I reserved a parking place at the off-site lot in Detroit. I planned to head out from Jane's house early enough to give me time to park, take the shuttle, and board my flight with ease. The cold had permeated my car's engine when I went to leave Jane's house. My luck was proving to be bad all day long. Somehow, I eventually managed to start my car. I wasn't worried about time. I had plenty. The cold was again my immediate concern. 15 miles up into Michigan, I decided to stop in Monroe for some fast food. I still had plenty of time. I was halfway to the airport. I was hungry. I exited the freeway and I stopped at a drive-thru restaurant. I ordered my food and pulled around to the restaurant window. I opened my car door because my window was frozen shut. I opened my wallet to get my card to pay. I had eaten only once that day, right when I reached Jane's house in the morning. I was looking forward to the fish sandwich, chicken nuggets, and fries. It was worth feeling the frigid air slam into me as I opened my door at the pickup window. The cashier extended her hand from the drive-thru window. My response was unexpected. I opened my wallet, and a 2-word sentence escaped my lips. "Oh no." I still had the $4 in my wallet. I no longer had the $1,000 in my other pocket. The cash was in my bank as of that morning. The issue with my debit card had been resolved. I was fully able to use my card with no issues, except my card wasn't in my wallet. It was on the table in my room at Jane's house, left there after I reserved the parking space. Hunger and even the cold were once again pushed from my mind. I suddenly had bigger issues. I had a choice to make. I was still good on time, but that would all go out the frozen window if I opted to try to make it back to recover my debit card. I pulled away from the drive-thru with nothing to eat. I made a choice. I was going to head to the northwest corner of Montana with only the $4 I had in my pocket. I wasn't going to miss a second flight out of that terrible Midwest winter hell. I was going to travel across the entire country without enough money to buy a sandwich along the way. I got back on the freeway and I drove north from Monroe, Michigan. I found the parking lot up by the airport. I was hungry, cold, and fed up with the day's ridiculousness. I parked in the congested, snow-covered lot. I did the best I could to shield myself from the wind, and I slid my way across the lot to the shuttle loading area. Before I could reach the small metal overhang, the shuttle left the airport. It was another 15 minutes of standing in high winds and negative temperatures before the next shuttle picked me up.